When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Wai Ting. The A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night. Download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the mic.
Hello and welcome to Rewind a Raw, the Labor Day edition of the show. I am John Pollock alongside Wai Ting, who always puts the U in labor, as we do in Canada.
Right. Okay. Trying to think what that means.
Nothing. That's it. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing all right.
You go outside today?
Briefly, but not for very long, because we're going through a bit of probably the last heat wave of the summer, but it's a really hot one. Yeah.
It said today we had a high of 33, which for our American friends, that's like 89 Fahrenheit, but felt like 39. It was insane outside today. Like this was like Vegas heat, the closest I can recall.
Yeah, and for those of you who might actually be in Vegas,
it's not that much hotter in Vegas. Like Vegas is usually like low 40s typically.
Yeah.
Low to mid 40s.
Like, I mean, I guess for a lot of people, like how hot it is somewhat relative. A lot of people might be used to hotter temperatures where they are. Like we get a range certainly in Canada, in Toronto especially, but this is even for Toronto, like in the summers, it feels a lot hotter than, what I would classify usually as hot.
This is going to be the part of the show where I say, if anyone is going to tweet me to tell me how hot it is where they live and that we should stop complaining, you can do that, but I'll block you. Okay. I will block you if you go out of your way to tell me, well, here it's even hotter. You know what? I don't live where you live. I live where I live, and it was hot today. So that's what I'm saying. I have a very divisive relationship with people online. How are you? I asked that already. I don't care. What are you looking forward to? Wai? What's on tap this week?
In life?
Yes, I don't care about wrestling. I don't care about anything else. What is your goal for this week in September?
I think just to be happy.
Oh, I thought you were going to build something. Maybe you have a purchase to make. Maybe
nothing specific. No,
I think your beautiful backyard. Wai has a wonderful backyard. I always tell him I'm considering inviting myself over one of these days.
You are welcome. I actually had WH Park over today.
What?
Oh yeah. It was a lovely little get together.
Did he just show up?
No.
Oh.
We planned this for a bit, but yeah, it helped out. Like he gets along really well with Oscar. He's wonderful with children.
He is.
I don't know if you know this.
I was only the once when we were at your place, and he was very good with kids. I've never seen him around kids before.
Great with kids,
Does swear around them, but you take the good with the bad.
I mean, I didn't experience that today, but it's okay at this age. They don't even know what most of that stuff is.
Let me tell you about this shit they air on Monday nights that your dad watches. Okay, here's some stuff you really want to get into.
You know what? I actually sat down and watched the Vikingo versus Nick Gage with him, like just with a bit of downtime.
How was the match?
And, I personally enjoyed it. I think certainly more than WH did. I don't think it falls within any sort of like, Venn diagram of the type of wrestling that he likes, but I thought it delivered like a good sampling of what you would expect from both of them, but blended together. So
you didn't watch the whole GCW show with WH?
I did not. No. I think he,
I would have loved his thoughts on John Wayne Murdoch or, Swoggle and Colt Cabana teaming up. It's quite the card crafted for him.
Yeah. No, but he helped out watching Oscar for one of his wake windows. It was a lovely time.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you had a great Monday.
How about you? What are you looking forward to?
Tomorrow's the first day of school, so that is I don't know how that's going to go. I think Max has really enjoyed the summer and is not. I don't think he's stoked to be going back to school, but he is. So that's tomorrow.
Evie's not doing school. Preschool or anything?
No, she's just going to be homeschooled. No, she actually starts next year.
Wow,
they will be both off the school. Yes.
Okay.
You still have a few years before that big transition.
I do, but isn't it good? Isn't it kind of good for you? Just to have a little bit more free time potentially with one of the kids in school.
One less child in the house during the day. that will be a lot less chaotic than
Right.
two of them that are just trying to just destroy everything in sight. This weekend, you probably know this. You're very in tune with everything that goes on. But we were woken up on Saturday morning by Max, who informed us that Evie has gone downstairs. She's gotten into the paint, and we sprung up, and we were like, no. And we run downstairs. And our collective reaction was, it was like momentary silence as we digested what we were seeing. Like, is there a possibility this is a bad dream? Because the amount of paint that this girl had gotten into, like, this was sealed paint that she had like bit open and just painted everything in sight. She's covered in this paint. There are foot marks over the carpet. There is paint on our couch. There's paint all over the place. I sent you photos of this.
Do I have permission to share one of these pictures?
Oh, go for it. Sure.
It's a disaster.
It's a little hard to see this, but those blocks that are all on that table, they have all been painted.
They're magnetic blocks.
Yeah, they're magnetic blocks that have all been painted. And I mean, she just went to town on
Can I show the couch?
Go for it. Yeah, this was there's paint here.
Yeah. So if you're gonna have paint in the house, don't have a child, is what you're saying.
It was an interesting morning, to say the least. But anyway, yeah, paint is something you want.
So you might be sending Evie to school a year early. Is that it?
Well, no, she's not. But that was she clearly is already taking up arts and crafts at a very young age. So
brutal.
Yeah, that was my advice to you. Don't buy paint.
Okay,
that would be.
Or like put a combination lock on it or something. You know. I mean, I think you should be impressed, you know, the fact that she was able to find the paint, be able to open it herself, be able to like go through a lot of hassle.
She is able to, she takes like different, like whether they be garbage cans or stuff, like she will take stuff, stack them and climb to get to what she needs. And it's a miracle she has not like fallen on any of this stuff. But some of the things she pulls off, like this is a 2-year-old, and what she can do is, it's insane.
She sounds incredibly resourceful. Yeah.
She's very resourceful, and she's like, and doesn't like put up with like any of like our discipline or anything. Like if she wants to shut me down, it's like, please stop talking. Please stop talking. Please stop talking. And it's just like, excuse me. She's I think I've lost control of her. So anyway.
Man, I do you, so I know you don't really want people tweeting you I guess temperature updates from where they are, but are you open to like maybe parenting advice from people who have maybe dealt with similar issues with their children?
It's nice when people think of that. I'm not soliciting advice. But,
okay, I don't even know if this is so much an issue. I mean, it sounds like
it's a 2-year-old being a 2-year-old.
There's some incredible talent here. You know, some incredible gifts that maybe could be, you know, mined somehow.
Yeah, I inevitably like laugh at these things. I get upset over other things, but this one was just more so. I mean, it was definitely like there's part of it is, well, at least let's get some photos here before we have to clean this whole thing up, so we know this.
You got a podcast story out of it.
That's it. That's all you can hope for in this day and age. Well, coming up this week, Wai and I, we're going back to a time pre-children for us. It's the summer of 2016 when it was a hot week in Las Vegas, when we were there for UFC 200. 3 shows in 3 nights. The UFC was sold the next week, and we are chatting about the main card of UFC 200, a historic event for the company featuring Brock Lesnar against Mark Hunt, featuring Amanda Nunes against Miesha Tate, and the big John Jones, Daniel Cormier. Oh, wait a minute. John Jones got pulled from the fight due to a drug test issue, and Daniel Cormier fights Anderson Silva on last-minute notice at the UFC's first event at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the brand new constructed arena in the city.
Yes, a lot of drama heading into this particular week, and some memories that I'm sure we'll do our best to try to share.
We're going to recap some fights, and then we're going to spend an hour talking about Korean food and all of our other adventures in Las Vegas that week 7 years ago.
Very exciting.
Okay, so check that out on Rewind Away this coming Thursday. We've got all your regular favorites. We will have Rewind to Dynamite. We will have Rewind to SmackDown, Collision Course, and then Wednesday morning, it will be B Detroit and John Cena, their final week, filling in for Davey and Braden. Davey is reportedly going to be returning from England this week.
Happy belated birthday to Davey Portman as well.
Yes, I'm sure he wishes he was celebrating his birthday at the Hitman's Bar in Calgary, but London will suffice in its absence. All right, all of that can be found postwrestling.com. And if you didn't hear any of the news about CM Punk and a falling out with AEW, I have recapped the last 2 years for everybody to get caught up to date. I felt like, why not? Who has really dived into the CM Punk story of late? No one, right? So why not I spend my day writing about CM Punk? And that is what I did today. And you can read all about the trials and tribulations of the AEW CM Punk marriage and divorce and the highs and lows, because there were definitely parts to both throughout this very erratic relationship, and one that came to an end on Saturday.
Incredibly comprehensive as always from you, John. And did you gain any new perspective from maybe looking at the totality of his run in quick fashion like this?
I mean, I look at it and I think that he has set some benchmarks in AEW that are going to be very hard to eclipse. I don't think that it's going to be easy for them to beat this pay-per-view number that he set with Darby Allin 2 years ago. I don't think there's a prayer there will ever be a more watched episode of Rampage. That record seems pretty solid in Punk's corner
until he comes back.
Well, I mean, if there was a bit of like looking at it, did he make a difference on Collision? Yes. Was he an overwhelming difference maker? No. And we will look back, and this is the timing of this could very well benefit CM Punk and his drawing ability, because inevitably Collision is going to be hurt. College football is now back, and you would think that Collision is going to, whether Punk was there or not, I think Collision was going to start to take a bit of a hit over these next couple of months. And now if you are somebody that's arguing for Punk's reinstatement in AEW, or were advocating for him to stay, you can probably look at that and you can make that argument. But the fact is that Collision had kind of reached a level, and I don't know if it was as high as people expected a show built around the returning CM Punk was going to be. And outside of that first week, the other big success of Collision had been that week where it was FTR defending the tag titles against MJF and Adam Cole in Hartford. And that pulled a very strong number as well. And that's not to say Collision has been a disappointment. Like, they're doing a 0.20, and that's a good number for Saturday night. But I think inevitably they are going to now fall below a 0.2. So you can look at where was Punk's where was the drawing power of Punk. And I think this last year it did somewhat hurt it in terms of a certain fan base, but you also have the Saturday night factor as well. Would Punk have been performing differently if he was positioned on Wednesday nights every week, and would he have meant more there? It's a question we can't answer.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that this is going to be harmful to AEW's business, but there are certain things that it, to me, seems like no matter how much benefit he provided, this company probably wasn't going to stand for, and this was one of those incidents. So it almost feels like whether or not we can talk about CM Punk's drawing power has a lot to do with whether or not those issues could be overcome first and foremost before we discuss any sort of, like, certainly return, to AEW, but even employment in another company.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be differing opinions on how this was handled. Mark Henry, I did hear his comments on Busted Open Radio, and he's in an interesting position as being a member of the media on Busted Open while also being employed by AEW. And the way he laid it out was, okay, the problem's out now, so there better not be any more problems, right? Because the problem's gone. And if you can read between,
so yeah, almost sarcastic, a little bit of sarcasm.
it came across as sarcastic in that, okay, this is maybe not Mark Henry's belief of, maybe this guy presented his problems, but it was not isolated to this one guy. So when inevitably there are other issues, and listen, this is not going to just be a, all, sunshine moving forward. I mean, there are inevitably in any locker room, there are going to be issues that rise to the surface and sometimes boil over. But the way you kind of had it framed from Mark Henry was of the sense that you certainly had for him that this should have been like, this was a valuable performer, that this should have been handled internally. This should not have been the end result. That's what I took from his description and opinion.
Yeah, certainly sounded like he was frustrated, and that certainly not all the blame for the incident should be placed on CM Punk.
He also blamed the media. The media caused all this.
Oh, of course, it's always something an easy target, I suppose. It's a unique sort of like relationship I think he has with Busted Open, as well as being attached. And I think Booker T is very similar with his podcast, where like he gets to speak really about his genuine thoughts about topical stories at large. I'm also curious to know, like, maybe how Tony Khan or people within AEW would feel about basically like what sounded to me like an employee criticizing one of the moves that I'm sure was done with a lot of consideration. And it's a radio show, so it's a radio show where he's asked to give his opinion, and the guy gave his opinion. I'm sure a lot of people will agree. I don't know, without knowing exactly why he was fired, or the specific reasons. I can't really say if it was an overreaction at all.
You also have to remember that when you are hearing from veterans in the industry that have seen it all in locker rooms, this is not some scandalous or fireable offense that they are seeing. I mean, that is from a generation that this kind of stuff was just common practice, or it was just handled in a much different way, and they're going to come at it from that perspective. Did you see any of the reference on being the elite today?
No. What was the reference?
So there was one scene where Kenny Omega needs a drink, and he takes this bottle that appears to be a Pepsi bottle.
So it's actually not.
It's not, but they're stating it was water with electrolytes, but he's hiding like the bottle.
That's how he drinks water on BTE. It's sort of a running gag. He does it with the two hands.
Okay, but then several scenes later, they're all together drinking Cokes together, and I think if anyone, I think it's a cute way of plausible deniability. But I think those guys are all clever enough to know that people were going to take that in such a way.
I haven't seen the scene with the Coke, but like I think Kenny himself like went on Twitter to answer one of those headlines claiming that he was drinking Pepsi in reference to CM Punk to deny it himself. Because like I've seen him do this bit throughout the rest of BTE, I'm willing to bet, at least for that particular scene, that it might have just been coincidental, or at least a bottle that looked like a Pepsi. But I did not see the Coke scene that you're referencing.
Okay. Well, perhaps it's just misinterpretation, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt on that particular instance. So it was water with electrolytes that tasted like a lighter fluid.
Yeah. So Kenny Omega, in reference to a headline from NoDQ.com, Kenny Omega drinks a Pepsi. CM Punk has a Pepsi tattoo during being the elite and says it tastes like lighter fluid. Kenny Omega tweets, "Water with electrolytes. Stop it, please."
Okay. Well, they would they would never like make subtle reference to something though. So
of course they would. Now with this
do they deserve the benefit of the doubt? That's my question.
I think now, for me, the answer is yes, but I would have said that after Brawl Out, and then they had that match with, the Death Triangle, like completely referencing everything, right? So whatever. Like, I have no right answer here. Whatever I say, people are going to get mad at. Some people will get mad at. So, what do you think?
Then
John?
you can tweet, "Stop it."
Yeah,
response.
sure. Stop it, please.
Well, let's move on to the All Out press conference that went down after the event, and just some of the notes that came out of this. Tony Khan was asked about CM Punk having a no compete period. He would not comment on that. He was asked about Jack Perry and stated that Jack is suspended indefinitely. So that's the only update we have on Jack Perry. So it's not like he has not been punished from this, but it would appear that he is not going to lose his job, and this will be, he will serve the suspension and then seemingly come back at a date to be determined. And like, really, it was like the obvious topic was all CM Punk related, and it seemed like Tony Khan got everything he wanted out the day before, and he was going to evade and no comment like usual here. And when he was asked by Adam Cole was out there at one point, and Nick Hausman asked Adam Cole a question about the vibe of the locker room with everything going on with CM Punk. And then a secondary question was to Tony Khan about what he has learned from this whole situation involving CM Punk. So Adam Cole gave an answer of just, man, we were so excited about these shows and the biggest shows in the company's history. It just made no reference to Punk. And Tony Khan didn't even answer the question. He just moved on. So that was about what it was limited to when it came to the incident from last weekend, whether you agree or not, but he had to have known like he was going to get questions about this, but I guess felt, he put out the statement and he was not going to elaborate any further.
Yeah. And I kind of expected as much. Like the statement coupled with like his appearances both in Arena and also on Collision, I feel kind of gave us a lot more detail than I think we were all expecting. And that I think number one was done, to again try to maybe answer a lot of questions from the audience, but number two, so that he wouldn't have to field a lot of these similar questions at the press conference. And I have to imagine a lot of it is still legally tied up, or at least, maybe a lot more sort of like secretive than he's willing to reveal at present time. And that it's what it is right now.
He also shared that with CJ Perry, she is not under any long-term guarantee. So it seems like it's a short-term thing, but of course, that could always change and it's extended, but it looks like at least this initial deal, it's just a short-term thing, and we'll see how things go.
Yeah.
And other things was the business of the show. He, as we mentioned on Sunday's show, he's believes it'll be over 100,000 buys for Sunday's show, and that All In is closer to 200,000 buys. And he believes that if they end up drawing, if they sell approximately between the two shows, you're looking at almost 100,000 tickets and 300,000 buys. That he looks at those as really strong numbers and believes that is more than enough fuel to try this again next year. And I would certainly say with over 200,000 buys, you would definitely think that would be considered a success
for All In. Yes, absolutely.
I would say for All Out as well. Like I would think that like if they have done over 100,000 buys, I think they look at that as a success coming this shortly afterwards. And then mentioned he is not renewing Sonny Kiss's deal when that was asked about. And then Bryan Danielson was asked about deciding what he wants to do. And, once this deal is up, he will assess. He wants time at home with his family, but he's also, he loves pro wrestling. And he says anything he is asked to do by Tony Khan, he's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
A company person. And that Saturdays for Collision will be much better for his family life, and heavily praised Ricky Starks, going so far as to state that Ricky Starks carried him through the match, and it was a match full of a lot of smoke and mirrors, and seemed very happy with the end result, and that he was cleared by AEW Medical and an outside surgeon. And another like very strong Bryan Danielson appearance at one of these press conferences. And I guess the only other thing was Christian noting that he had recently signed a new contract, but he did his largely in character on the stage.
Mm-hmm. Was asked about Edge and says he has no friends but Luchasaurus.
So there you have it. All right, we will move on. Sunday also featured the end of the N1 Victory Tournament, where Go Shiozaki won his first N1 tournament, beating Kenoh in the finals. Not the level of Danielson and Ricky Starks, but this was a really brutal, hard-hitting match that the two had. This included these huge chops and kicks, multiple sequence of this, and this spin kick that drilled Shiozaki and hitting Go with this big head kick while he was on his knees that looked devastating. And then we saw Shiozaki make his comeback with an Emerald Flosion for a near fall and then winning with the moonsault. They went 32 minutes and 48 seconds. So now Go Shiozaki will challenge Jake Lee on September 24th in Nagoya. And Kenoh was the only person to beat Jake Lee, who's the GHC heavyweight champion, during the round robin portion. So the big title match is September 24th, but Noah's next big card is Marufuji's anniversary show on September 18th at Korakuen with Marufuji against Will Ospreay, which is the match that Ospreay was pushing for and received. And that'll probably be a very big match, given, Ospreay and a first-time match with Naomichi Marufuji.
One of his idols.
Yes. So that's coming up in 3 weeks' time. TV ratings are delayed because of Labor Day, so we will get the SmackDown and Rampage numbers on Tuesday, but everything will be pushed back for the next several days. But coming up over the next 2 nights, we have NXT, which will feature Tiffany Stratton and Kiana James for the women's title, Von Wagner against Braun Breaker in a no DQ match, Mustafa Ali against Dragon Lee with Dominik Mysterio as a referee, Oro Mensah against Ilya Dragunov, and Daba Kato against Tyler Bate. Dynamite on Wednesdays in Indianapolis, Indiana. All we have is Jericho and Sammy Guevara against Aussie Open. The World Title Eliminator Tournament kicks off with the winner challenging on September 20th at Grand Slam. And then we will hear from Hangman Page and MJF on the show, and probably many more match announcements to come before Wednesday night as they come out of the show and have a very quick turnaround, because you have both Grand Slam and Wrestle Dream over the next couple of weeks to set up big matches for. So it's not going to be the usual turnaround for a pay-per-view where you've got months before the next time you have to peak. They've got 2 very big shows in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah. We'll see if there might be an MJF title defense for Wrestle Dream, or if they might be holding it off for Grand Slam. So we'll see.
I thought coming out of All Out that a great match that you could do would be 2 of the LA Dojo proteges of Samoa Joe against Bryan Danielson, who both had their big wins. It's a tribute to Inoki, and that sets up who gets the next shot at MJF.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that for Wrestle Dream and have MJF in some other role on the show. Maybe it is him and Cole on that show if you're going to do a title defense at Grand Slam and then save his next title defense for the winner of Joe and Danielson, or you go in a different direction. It's just a question of when you get to MJF and Joe, I would assume.
Yeah.
Raw tonight was at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is our last week before Monday Night Football returns next week. And tonight they had no Cody Rhodes, no Kevin Owens, no Becky Lynch, and no Trish Stratus either. So 4 pretty sizable stars that they had without. And I will say, in their absence, I thought this was a pretty entertaining edition of Raw.
I thought so too. I thought it did a lot of really good building for the future, in particular with Jey Uso and his sort of insertion into this world and this cast of characters. So taking a break from, we don't even know if Trish will come back at this point, but
it doesn't seem like it. There was no follow up tonight. That did feel like the end of the run.
Right.
They promote the show as being a historic one. If Gunther can win, then he then sets the new record for the longest intercontinental champion of all time, unless I guess he runs into someone on SmackDown, which I guess he will not. So he will break the record. Maybe they'll do a special countdown clock all week.
Maybe.
Jey Uso arrives. He comes through the audience, and Michael Cole mentions that Cody Rhodes used to be an EVP, and he can get things done. Look at that. So he welcomes everyone to Raw, and Jay says, I've only been gone about 2 or 3 weeks, but it felt a lot longer. And he reached a breaking point fighting his family every week. And, if that was the problem, you would have thought man, I'm not going to quit this company. They have a second show that I could go on to. This was always an option for him. So instead of just ending your career This is a good backup plan. Go to Raw.
I don't know why he didn't consider it. Well, maybe because he didn't believe in the roster split. I mean, people go back and forth all the time.
Yeah, maybe one of those weeks when Cody came over to SmackDown, he convinced him and said, the brand split's real. It's real. So he says Cody called him and he knows he has some enemies in the back. And this is going to be the story. Like, he's coming over into enemy territory where he is not liked because of all his past actions alongside the bloodline. But Sami Zayn comes out and he says that he is happy that Jey is here. And they didn't always see him, and Owens didn't always see eye to eye on him, but Owens isn't here tonight. And he says he's happy for Jey breaking free of the bloodline. He now truly is main event Jey Uso, and he gets choked up, stating how proud he is of Jey, offers his hand, but Jey doesn't accept it. But then as he's leaving, Jey says, well, that wasn't very Usy of me. And he puts out his hand and they have a big hug. Crowd cheers. They love hugging. So.
Especially with these two. I mean,
this is like two AEW angles altogether. They left them hanging on the handshake, and then we got a hug at the end of it. So,
didn't we get did we get a Sami and Jey hug earlier? Have we ever had that?
We did the Sami and Kevin Owens hug. That was pre-WrestleMania.
I think we had. Didn't we have a Sami and Jey hug, but with Jey turning on Sami?
Yeah, when they like beat him on the floor afterward. They did it. They did one where it was like a big. They built to something and then immediately killed Sami.
Right. Anyway, so there's all.
Sami's very forgiving, as is Cody.
But I think that's pretty consistent with the Sami Zayn character as it relates to Jey Uso. He's always been the one to see past, all the bullshit for Jey. And I think like the Jey character has been presented as one that has always been conflicted about whether or not he'd choose good or bad. And tonight, I'm glad that they're not continuing to drag out whether or not Sami and Jey are going to be friends. We are way past that at this point, and we're just starting things off with basically Sami Zayn being the only friend of Jey Uso on Raw right now. And I absolutely love this storyline that they've set up for Jey entering Raw. You can say what you want about the brand split and whatever, but like I still think there's a lot of benefit to having it, as long as you can use it to tell certain stories that you wouldn't otherwise be able to without the brand split. And so they're basically like kind of using Jey as star player from a rival team that suddenly just got traded to your home team in exchange for the old star player who might not be as effective anymore, but is beloved by the hometown. And everybody on the team remembers this guy playing for the opposition, and he absolutely hates him. And there's so much drama, to be able to told from a guy trying to navigate those waters to try to earn the respect and earn the trust of his new teammates, essentially.
Is this like when Adam Banks got moved from the Hawks to play for the Mighty Ducks?
Yeah.
Because he was in the wrong district.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the motivation. So that was our opening segment. But then, as Jey is leaving, Drew McIntyre's music plays. And I was waiting for Drew to just shove him to the side like Samoa Joe. I mean, this was very reminiscent of what just happened last night. But he just eyes Jey, and they lock eyes, and Zayn gets between them. And Drew just continues to the ring. And then Riddle comes out. He also stares at Jey. And I don't think Jey shouldn't have been too concerned about it. It's like, I can deal with this guy being on my bad side. But Drew, you might want to be watching out for.
They all, I mean, every babyface, of note on Raw, really within the WWE, has had a history with the bloodline at this point. And Jey was, right-hand man to Roman Reigns, causing a lot of that damage. So I love the fact that they're using all of that to tell further stories, to tell further drama of a guy trying to fit in.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job of establishing Jey in this new environment and getting it across. Like, it's so anti-WWE where all of the history is remembered and it does have ramifications, and we're not just living in 4-week pay-per-view cycles of your memory.
Yeah. Oh, you're a good guy. I can trust you again. Yeah, like, I mean, yes, like it was maybe pointed out by somebody that Cody happens to be one of the people that was screwed the most by the bloodline. And yet
Cody's a glaring one, but it's almost as though they're not even ignoring it. They're like asking, why would Cody do this?
So yeah, like I hope next week, like we get that explanation from Cody.
Nakamura reacts to Payback, and I was very happy to see that his reaction was a video with subtitles. So they realized they're sticking with here. And he has broken Seth, like he broke the code that the two of them shared. He underestimated Seth's grip on the title, but he was the one left standing on the battlefield. He will prevail. He will be champion. So the program continues, and they did show footage of the post-show attack on Rollins by Nakamura, and that was the story, that Rollins ended up needing to be wheeled out of the arena in a wheelchair by his wife, and Nakamura walked. And you definitely got the sense of a last man standing match being the follow-up based on kind of the language that they were using. And if you can do the same thing, walk out of the arena, then you will be champion this time.
I think that would be wonderful, a wonderful way to sort of like take this back injury story to the next level. And now the added wrinkle, of course, they're putting onto it is that you get the sense this whole Nakamura thing is all in service of a big Money in the Bank cash-in tease from Damian Priest, who, you know, of course, will be preying on a champion with an injured back. So they're going to put Seth through the hardest challenges and basically turn him into Orange Cassidy from last night so that he is completely vulnerable to a cash-in.
Ricochet is meeting with Adam Pearce. He's still stinging over that loss to Logan Paul at SummerSlam. And Pearce then walks up to Seth Rollins and said, "What are you doing here? You're not, the medical team doesn't want you here." And Rollins says, "I'm fine. I can fight." So this is how the clearance works in WWE.
Yeah.
Medical doesn't want you here, but they haven't not cleared you. Like Kevin Owens, who is not cleared and is not here tonight. Ricochet just comes up and says, "You know, I really respect you, but you don't have to carry the show all by yourself. You know, our quarter hours are doing okay. We're drawing really well. Cody's a draw," and Seth insists that he is fine, and he leaves. Drew McIntyre and Matt Riddle against the Viking Raiders in a tornado tag match, and Michael Cole very busy Googling the first tornado tag match, 1936, promoted by Morris Siegel, with Milo Steinburn and Whiskers Savage against Fazul Muhammad and Tiger Dalla.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think maybe you should give a shout out. If you do Google this, Ryan Dilbert at Bleacher Report had an article on this. So maybe Cole could have given a shout out to his stats team or who he got this research from.
Well, I'm glad you did.
That's what I'm here for. Xavier Woods is gone with a cervical issue via office chair to the face. And Drew does.
Do you know if that's real or
exaggerated? Yeah, I think it's just the storyline. And Drew throws Riddle over the top onto the Vikings, same spot they did last week. And then Riddle comes in and does the Dudleys get the table spot, and they pull the table out from under the ring as we cut to break. Like, this is the big pop moment, and we just go to break. Come back, Riddle is laid out on the table, so this must have been a hellacious commercial break for Riddle. But Drew clears the desk, and from there, he is stopped by Ivar from behind, and he tosses Ivar over the desk, hits the belly-to-belly to Eric, and after Drew lands, Ivar splashes him off the desk. Valhalla distracts Riddle, gets hit by a spin kick, and as they go for Ragnarok to put Riddle through the table, Kofi Kingston shows up, but he screws up, and the Trouble in Paradise misses, and he nails Riddle, and Kofi is so sorry. They lawn dart Kofi into Drew and proceed to put Riddle through the table with Ragnarok and pin him in 9:52. Drew is not happy about this, even though he did the exact same thing last week, but the hypocrisy is the idea here.
This week, he thinks it's intentional. He thinks this was a receipt, whereas last week, to him at least, you know, it was truly unintentional. So there's follow up to that afterwards, but maybe a little bit surprised because I thought at this point they'd be going through a pretty typical arc with Drew and Riddle where they might experience some turbulence early on, but then start to win. This is now a few losses in a row, I think, for this team. I don't know if this team has really ever won a match together. You know, they're really they really should not be teaming up, okay, at this point. So
this also has none of the same charm that Randy Orton and Matt Riddle did, and I do feel that this one should be a more short-term one. I don't think this is one that I would be investing months in. I think the faster, and they already seem to be accelerating the preparation for a Drew turn.
Yeah, and I think tonight's result, having them lose and having maybe some of these backstage segments to follow, certainly gave me the sense that we are going to not really get a full run with this tag team, and that really it's just all being done to serve whatever evolution we're about to get in Drew McIntyre's character. So I'll have to say, in all of this, I don't think the Viking Raiders benefited at all through any of these quote unquote wins. I mean, they're complete afterthoughts. I mean, really, the story is blank team losing versus the Viking Raiders winning. So, whatever.
They didn't even get their match with Owens and Zayn as the babyface tag champions. Like Viking Raiders against the Judgment Day is a odd fit.
Oh yeah, no, they're not even talking about title contention with them.
Throughout the night, they just showed shots of all the various IC champions, which was a nice touch to make this feel like an important main event, which they did establish from the start would headline the show with Gunther and Chad Gable. Seth comes out. He is still the champion, but Nakamura was the one to walk out, and he was wheeled out by his wife on a wheelchair. So he calls out Nakamura, who comes out, but he won't enter the ring, and Rollins offers him a rematch tonight, and Nakamura responds in Japanese, so he gets the what's, and Seth says, I am not fluent in your native tongue, but I assume you're accepting this, and Nakamura turns down the offer, and Seth says, I know it's Labor Day, but we're independent contractors, and I've clocked in and I'm ready to fight. And he attacks Nakamura. They're separated by security, and Nakamura knees him in the back, and Ricochet comes out to attack Nakamura as Rollins' backup here. And then they did this digital explanation online by Nakamura, who explained, I won't be told what to do. I will decide when I have.
Oh, that was a subtitle afterwards.
No, it was actually non-subtitled. They just put a video up on Twitter and YouTube, and it was him just speaking in English.
Oh, I see. Just like another interview after the fact.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. They didn't air on the show, but did air online.
So I found this really interesting. You know, like throughout the past build to Payback, we've seen these great Nakamura videos that have all been done pre-production. We never saw him basically come out to the arena to cut a promo. And tonight was, I think, the first instance we got to see this version of Nakamura do some sort of in-arena speech. And they are opting to go with him speaking Japanese, weathering the what chance, and then maybe saying something very matter-of-fact, simple for the audience to be able to understand the gist of it. And I guess to take that further, they're going to have him translate it on the internet after the fact.
He could do Shibata's deal with a phone.
He could. Yeah, he could. Or they
do you like the fact that to them Japanese is a heel language? Because when any
language is a heel language,
no,
like that's
when
English.
Spanish is spoken, that's typically met with like a babyface reaction most times.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess it is like the second most dominant language in America, and therefore maybe there's a bit more acceptance of it. I mean, it happens with like, you know, French Canadians speaking French and others. So
is French a heel language? Traditionally, yeah. I guess it would be in pro wrestling.
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any way you're going to change that unless, you know, Japanese becomes that much more prevalent and spoken by everybody. So I give them credit for like continuing to try to find ways to basically take this Nakamura character from the studio into a live setting. And I felt this was relatively successful tonight.
I had no issue with the segment. And that takes us to Nakamura and Ricochet. And I did feel like the explanation could have been used here, like why this guy turns down a title match and then accepts an impromptu nothing match right away.
Right.
But nonetheless,
they just need, you know what they need? They need like Barrett with some sort of like translation app, or like, you know, like he should just open up Google Translate so that he could hear what Nakamura is saying and then be able to translate to the audience.
Well, the match here, they showed Priest and Ripley watching in the back, and it was like, does Priest think that Nakamura won the title on the weekend? Like, what's he watching for here?
I mean, the idea, yeah, you're right. This part didn't necessarily make so much sense, other than the fact that he is very interested in the title picture, just because he's looking for a spot. But the idea was to just convey that, hey, Priest is very much in play in all of this. It's not just about Nakamura versus Rollins.
It made sense by the end, but not knowing that Rollins would get involved here, it was
right.
You know, maybe he was just, he wanted to watch the match. Maybe he, you know, this was, you know, he wanted to rank this on Cage Match. So There's a springboard clothesline, standing shooting star by Ricochet, hit the recoil, and then a running cannonball off the apron that barely connected. Nakamura didn't catch him at all. So Ricochet just pretty much dove off the apron and landed on the floor. And then Nakamura sends Ricochet into the timekeeper's area and then attacks him with a chair for the DQ in 9.5 minutes. And Nakamura puts the chair around Ricochet's neck, and he's setting up for a Kinshasa when Rollins runs down, security is back out, and Rollins throws security over the top rope, hits a big dive to the floor, and hits Nakamura, and Rollins is then sent back first into the stairs as Ricochet chases off Nakamura with a chair. Then they cut to Priest, and Ripley tells him, not yet. Now is not the time.
Yeah.
Like, now is a great time. This guy was in a wheelchair on Saturday, and they just drove his spine into the steps. This would seem like a very good time. But you did have Ricochet out here with the chair, so maybe that was the hindrance.
But there's going to be an even better time, is what Rhea's probably thinking. Yeah, could Nakamura have used a win tonight? You know, coming off of the loss to Rollins and in setting up Nakamura for a rematch, probably. But I guess they decided that this would have been a better way to maybe make Nakamura look crazy, and that he really isn't so much concerned about maybe even winning the championship as he is about injuring, you know, somebody. Or maybe he just
this also allows him to do another match with Ricochet. Maybe 3 more.
You're right. I guess he's also
4
wise
weeks until his pay-per-view. How are we going to book this guy?
He's also wise to the idea that I already have a rematch. Why do I even need to bother with this right now? So I'm just gonna, you know, get myself DQ'd and injured this guy. But I will say, like, with the constant cutaways to Priest, it becomes really obvious that, like, this is not Nakamura going to win the championship. It's just him setting up Rollins, you know, for the cash in.
Zoey Stark was interviewed and said that no one pushes me around, not even a Hall of Famer like Trish. And Shayna Baszler walks in and calls Trish dead weight and compares her to the way she dropped Ronda Rousey and says that they have unfinished business. And Zoey challenges her to a match to determine who the baddest woman in the WWE is. SmackDown on Friday will feature AJ Styles against Jimmy Uso. And then the Judgment Day are out with all of their titles. They're drowning out Dominik, as they note it's his 1-year anniversary since joining the group. Baszler calls Rhea the great voice of reason, and that Damian, we've had our ups and downs, but now we're the champions. And he thanks JD McDonagh for having his back for the last 20 years. And he also thanks himself for becoming Grand Slam Finn. Don't know if that moniker will take off or not. Grand Slam Finn.
It's not that bad.
Well, as soon as he mentioned this, the crowd starts chanting, "You deserve it." And this was a chant they did not want to get. And Rhea just has to, well, of course he deserves it. And just let's move on. We don't want any praise from you fans. Rhea says she is still aggravated, though, because everyone's talking about Jey coming to Raw instead of focusing on them, and then proclaims the bloodline has fallen and Judgment Day are the most dominant group in WWE, which didn't sound like just a throwaway line. Like, that seems to be something that they are planting for a purpose.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, certainly you could be setting up a future bloodline faction versus faction match, but I mean,
the bloodline needs to be a group then.
Well, you're left asking, like, what bloodline? You know, there isn't exactly much of a faction right now. I mean,
well, there's 3 of them, I guess, if you include Jimmy.
If Jimmy is going to be a part of it, I suppose. Or could it just been a way to, you know, drag Jey Uso into this particular program with this line?
Well, JD walks out and he says he took the bullet for them, and he wants to explain why he's out there because Priest is skeptical of why he's showing up. And he says that big changes have been needed in Judgment Day for a while. And he tells Damian the briefcase has got to go. You don't need it. And he takes the briefcase and hands him a new briefcase.
A purple one.
Black and purple one that reads Senor Money in the Bank. You would have thought that he had just given Damian Priest like a Ferrari. He was so happy at this gift. This would be the easiest guy to win over if he was not a fan of you. Like, he got bribed by like a Toys R Us briefcase, and he was ready to welcome this guy into the family with this briefcase. You have never seen a guy just go, what a attitude adjustment.
Those things are really expensive, dude. And then a custom paint job on top of it. I mean, the graphic design, you know, I'm sure, you know, there's like quite the.
Well, my question is, who took the old briefcase, which in theory has the contract in it?
That's a very good point.
Is this just an empty briefcase he gave him, and he's just walking around with his empty briefcase now?
Maybe he snuck the contract out.
Sami Zayn comes out and he says that it took all 5 of you to rob us of our tag titles, and I don't see 5 champions in the ring. I was like, neither do I, because JD McDonagh doesn't have a title. And he sees 5 championship stealing turds. And this crowd tried to chant turds, and they realized that one's not going to take off. And the biggest one is Dominik, and he challenges Dominik, but instead JD steps up to fight Sami Zayn. Zayn accepts, and that will happen later.
Mm-hmm.
Gunther, with his white backdrop, he is speaking in German, and Gable cannot stand in the way of his legacy. History will be made tonight. Gable doesn't belong in the history books. Gable's fame is temporary. Mine is forever. Pierce meets with Raquel Rodriguez, and they have agreed to something. Some mystery has been approved. And Chelsea Green walks in and is now a 2-time women's tag team champion, she is proclaimed. And we note that Piper Niven is not medically cleared, as Pierce brings up the curse of these women's tag titles. Green does, and Pierce implies maybe it's not the titles that are cursed.
Yeah.
No, these titles are 1,000% cursed.
Yeah, and they even did the what did they did all the uncursing things to it too on social media. Did you see?
No, I did not.
They I don't know, brought out some sort of like weird witchcraft stuff to try to uncurse it, and
great job.
Clearly, it didn't work. So what's going on with Piper Niven? I don't
know what the deal is. I don't know, but I read this to be like a legitimate issue because I mean
they didn't even give him a fair shake, and they would have done the injury on screen if it was legit, like not just a work.
She's also the muscle in the group. It's kind of tough to even put her in that sort of like vulnerable light where she's like attacked or something. I mean, it's just, I don't know. We will see where this goes. But Green then runs down Raquel, who is still standing there. They're going to have a match tonight. Shayna Baszler and Zoey Stark. So Stark is selling her arm throughout the match and constantly gets caught in the Kirifuda clutch and is fighting free. And then after a standing switch to the Kirifuda, Stark tries to flip her over into the Z360. This was ultra ambitious, and doing it on live television, this was a rough go of things. Of what they were.
More of a Z270, like 289.
Yeah, maybe it was something that did not add up to a 360. So instead, she just decked Baszler and sent her to the floor, and they just like moved right on, and they didn't like rehash whatever they were trying here. She tries the springboard corkscrew, but lands again in the Kirifuda, and Stark, she fights it, but finally goes out at 8:51. And then afterward, Baszler walks over and tells Zoey that you gave me a better fight than Ronda ever did, and fist bumps her, which I thought part of the story
Zoey says you gave me a better fight than Trish ever did.
Yeah, which
and they didn't
Zoey
even
never
really
fought Trish. And the whole story was that Ronda tapped you out in like a minute multiple times. Like, wasn't that the whole lead? Like, ask Shayna how many times I tapped her in a minute. And Baszler like admitted to it, right? On the Ultimate Fighter. So I thought both here were just like very insincere.
You're not supposed to remember that detail.
But I'm 100% sure that Stark never fought Trish.
Yeah. Well, I think what they mean to say with a line like this is that
man, our partners sucked.
That's it. Yeah. This booking too, I thought was pretty unusual. Zoey is just coming off of a breakup with Trish at the pay-per-view, and for her to do a pass out finish to Shayna Baszler even as a way to pair them up, I kind of found definitely unusual. Like, you got the sense that these two are going to be a tag team, and as a team, I think they have a lot of potential. They have, similarly.
This could have been their Hobbs and Miro.
Yeah. Like, is it meat when it's like
big
women,
meaty women slapping big meaty women slapping meat?
Sure. They have similar.
I don't expect those chants from these crowds.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think their styles could also mesh well in a tag setting. They don't have to do the Z360 spot on each other again. So, but otherwise, I think
for their sake, I hope these two don't end up in this cursed division. Like, why would you want to enter this division?
It's very true, because like they both just kind of got out of tag team scenarios, or certainly Shayna did. So what are you going to have her do? Like, just compete for the tag titles again? And for Zoey, even, I kind of feel like that's a bit of a flat move rather than progressing in a singles path. So we'll see where it goes.
Baszler suggests to Judgment Day they bring McDonagh into the group, but Priest says he still has to prove himself tonight, and we'll see how he does. Dominik is like, whatever you guys think, whatever you guys want.
I love that.
He's great.
Yeah.
And Ripley then, the others leave, and she tells Dominik to make sure everything with JD goes to plan tonight. Chelsea Green.
She is really being positioned as the tribal chief of the group. You know, she's the one with the biggest brain, the one who's basically the leader, calling all the shots, the one who's looking at all the pieces like it's her chessboard. So we're left to maybe ponder why she wanted Dom to do this.
Chelsea and Raquel was very quick. Raquel got, she ragdolled Chelsea from behind, and then Green went for the injured knee, and then Raquel took her head off with a boot, fall away slam, drills her with a clothesline, and wins with the Tejana bomb in 1:43. So that will set up a singles match for the tag titles, maybe.
I don't know about that, but
might as well. Raquel then announces that what she got confirmed with Adam Pearce is that due to the interference of Dominik, she's getting a rematch with Rhea Ripley next week where Dominik is barred from ringside.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully it doesn't go 17 minutes.
Yeah. On TV, it's I hope not.
They could go 17, but you'll get like 2 commercial breaks in there, maybe 3. Gable is wearing a jacket that reads, it's an acrostic poem here for Gable. Given aggressive beatings like experts. It's like, dude, did you have all week to come up with this? Like, you could have given me an hour, and I promise you I could come up with something better for Gable than given aggressive beatings like experts. This was awful,
pretty bad.
Dude. It's like, whatever. It was the worst thing he had on the show, but I mean, this was terrible. Like, you could see, like, his back is, he was really proud of this jacket. And now tomorrow I'm going to read somewhere like his daughter came up with this or something, and I'll feel terrible. But it wasn't that clever. That's all I'm going to say. So he responds to Gunther's promo and says he's already in the history books as an Olympian with a master's degree and a valedictorian. He's won every tag title in this company, every tag title.
All 3 of them.
And he's going to add to his legacy tonight, and his family will be in the front row tonight. Drew is searching for Kofi Kingston. This is a solid, like, hour and a half since this match. He's like, Kofi, like, what's he been doing this whole time? He's like still sweating from the match. He runs into Riddle and he says, I've got my eye on Jey because I know he's going to screw up. And when he does, I'll deal with him, and I'll also deal with Cody. So, I mean, this is almost like we don't even need the turn. It's almost like he's already turned in some ways. Like he's plotting out his attack on these baby faces, and he's kind of already being viewed in that light. So Kofi apologizes, and Drew is suspicious. He was like, really? So last week, I just accidentally nailed Xavier, and this week you just happen to end up hitting him with the Trouble in Paradise. It's like, we just happened to remove CM Punk, and you just happened to be drinking this liquid on Being the Elite right before a scene involving Coke bottles.
Exactly that.
So Drew was being skeptical.
Just a coincidence.
That's all. It could have been. It could have been accurate, and he's gonna have his eyes on everyone in case any more accidents happen. And Kofi just tells Riddle to speak with Drew.
I thought this was great. I think Drew's characterization has been excellent here. All this shit is happening around him, and it's causing him to become a little paranoid. He's starting to be suspicious of everybody around him, and I thought Drew played paranoid really well. He kind of, when he started off with Riddle on Raw, like, he went from being this pretty calm, like, fun-loving, completely confident guy, didn't really get bothered by a whole lot, to now he's a guy who suffered several losses. He now has to share a locker room with Jey Uso, and he's just, in return, starting to care a lot more, and he's getting fired up, and he's getting pissed off, and he's becoming a far more interesting character. And in even this little segment, he's already set himself through, for feuds with Kofi, with Jey, with Cody, for bringing Jey in, and of course, eventually Matt Riddle as well. So I think, like, Drew has really, like, in this episode, stepped up to become a pretty interesting character. The performance is strong, and at the end of all this, I hope he becomes a really interesting heel.
You don't miss the old Scottish tales?
Not at all. No.
All this story time with Drew, baby. Yeah. MizTV, he comes out And he states, I did not lose at Payback. I was robbed and blindsided. And announces his guest tonight on MizTV, the greatest of all time, John Cena. And dude, this place goes nuts. This was the biggest pop of the night, and they all go wild. And then, no John Cena, but this cameraman shoots Cena's entrance, like movement for movement, but there's no John Cena.
It's probably Stu.
It had to have been Stu, who was he was the second best part of this segment, because as soon as he's doing this, I was like, okay, this
is awesome.
This is going to be great.
Yeah.
This was really funny the way they shot this entrance. And Miz states that he is going to interview John Cena and says that, John, you screwed me over. And the fans are so upset. They don't understand. And Miz says, can you see him? What? You can't see John Cena? He's sitting right here. Miz says, John, they can't see you, but I have been able to see right through you all these years. So I'm going to translate for you. And he asks, did LA Knight pay you off? Did you purposely screw me and conspire against me? And as he's asking these questions, the crowd's yelling, yeah. Miz says, don't yell, yeah. You can say yes. And then he's like, wait a minute. I don't like that word either, which was very funny. So just nod your head. And then he kicks out John Cena and says that this loss should be stricken from the record book. He gets shoved by John Cena. So he takes off his jacket. And then in maybe a top 5 Miz moment, he gets into a fight with John Cena and gives Invisible John Cena the skull crushing finale. Dude, you might have thought I was going to hate this thing. I love this. It was so entertaining. And then says that, like John Cena, LA Knight is going to fade away and his chances of success are as make-believe as John Cena is in this ring. And then he lifts up fake John Cena and he throws him like Brock Lesnar throwing a door across the arena. And then Michael Cole, phrasing here, says that Miz was lunging at an invisible man, which was the terminology that was being used about the whole Punk thing with Tony Khan. And dude, Michael Cole is as online as he's ever been. And I don't think that was, I don't believe in coincidences. Okay. That's my new thing. Okay?
That sounds like very specific wording.
Lunging was a very specific term, Michael Cole. The guy was dropping EVP terms at will at the beginning of the show. Dude, this was such a great segment. As much as I did not enjoy their match, and the fact is, this sounds like they're going to do another match. This segment was so entertaining. I thought it was so funny.
It's almost like the match is the thing you kind of have to bear, in order to get great segments like this. I'm also not really looking forward to the match, but man, the back and forth.
Bryce Remsburg has some competition.
Oh, absolutely. The back and forth on TV has really made for some great segments, and the MVP of this entire act really has been the Miz. He continues to really be do some of the most excellent work he's done in years as a part of this.
Impersonating LA Knight was a really entertaining segment last week, but this was even better.
He continues to create very unique and entertaining segments that have become highlights of Raw for several weeks now. I think it takes a lot of ability a lot of people can do this sort of invisible, man type of shtick, but to be able to know when to not do too much and to take it back to be serious, to be able to tie this segment into a very serious promo, to build up to a match that you're about to have, I think takes a lot of tact, and he's just really continuing to prove just how extremely talented he is for a TV pro wrestling angle.
Wait, I think there's a lot of talented people that would struggle to put a segment like this together. I think there's a very small number that would have been as entertaining as Miz was here. I think a lot would struggle. That's not a knock. I think this would be very tough to pull off on their own. This was a really entertaining segment. Jey Uso is in the back and he walks past Akira Tozawa, who just turns around and takes off. Even Tozawa hates this guy. And then he turns around, he meets Adam Pearce, and Pearce explains that SmackDown is going to get trade compensation for him. And Therefore, someone is going to have to leave Raw for SmackDown, and that might not endear you to more people in the locker room. Like someone popular is going to get yanked from Raw and sent to SmackDown. So, dude, this guy cannot win.
I love it. I love it so much. Again, it's like what a great way to build further resentment from the locker room to Jey Uso without Jey Uso really doing anything himself. So you're creating a lot of sympathy, I think, for the audience for Jey Uso, while at the same time completely justifying the locker room's hatred of this poor man. So it's a lot more like, I think, interesting storytelling than I think what we're used to, especially as it relates to a trade, you know, as part of this, like, more often than not completely illogical brand split. They put a lot of thinking into this, and I think they're using something that is just going to create a wonderful redemption story for Jey Uso for this babyface locker room.
The one thing is that, like, they don't really present these locker rooms as being like all these friends and stuff like that, or that one person in the locker room. Like, who would be the person that the whole locker room is going to be upset over?
It would have to be somebody completely beloved, and I think for that,
R-Truth.
I'm thinking Sami Zayn, you know, somebody on that level. Now, Zayn is building up something with Dominik, so maybe it won't be him. Maybe it'll be a Kevin Owens, but I think it'd have to be something on that, somebody on that level to just kind of further cause a lot more tension and divide.
Well, Zayn's an interesting one because it would certainly give him something on SmackDown that the bloodline, like some involvement there. So yeah, and they certainly were presenting Zayn as the guy that gets along with everybody.
He's the glue that holds everybody together, you know, whether it be Cody and Kevin or, you know, Riddle, everybody likes Sami Zayn. So to have him taken out in exchange for Jey Uso, everybody's going to hate Jey Uso.
Sami Zayn takes, and then Ciampa walks into Adam Pearce's office, and that was all we saw of this.
It's a very, very slow burn, whatever they're doing with Ciampa here.
Sami Zayn and JD McDonagh, a good match that they had. JD goes to the floor, but manages to send Zayn into the post. JD's chest was all red from chops, and then gets hit with this beautiful Michinoku driver. Then an exploder into the corner, and he goes for the haluva kick, but Dominik shows up, pulling McDonagh to the floor. So Zayn goes after Dominik, and then drills Dominik on the apron, which allows JD to roll him up in 806 for the win. Zayn goes back to attacking Dominik, and JD is just watching from the aisle. And when Dominik is set up for the haluva kick, JD does the same, and he saves Dominik. And Dominik, he just hightails it out of there, and it ends up with JD being the one to take the haluva kick.
Yeah, a lot happened here, but ultimately I think, needed to show that Rhea wanted JD to win for whatever reason. And then JD had to win, but at the same time, Sami Zayn had to look good coming out of the segment, so he kicked JD to close it. So I mean, you're left thinking, why does Rhea want JD to win so badly? To what end? You know, to keep the peace within Judgment Day, I guess.
They showed the segment with Tiffany Stratton and Becky Lynch from Payback, and then just plugged Stratton and Kiana James, but no mention of Becky Lynch like popping up at NXT or anything like that, but wasn't on the show tonight. Judgment Day are celebrating with McDonagh, and Dominik steps aside, and he walks over to Jey Uso, who's the new kid in school, and he has no one to eat lunch with. And Dominik explains that we both come from messed up families and Hall of Fame fathers. I know what you're going through. We know how it really is. And says Jey has no family. No one likes him here. And it's the same as no one liking me. But with the Judgment Day, there are no leaders. We're all equals. And I'd be willing to speak on your behalf to them because it's always open arms there for you. We know what it's like. And Jey, thank you for your time.
I love this. I thought this was fantastic. You know, what a brilliant idea to be able to draw parallels between like Dom's and Jay's characters using their broken family backgrounds, you know, to be able to tease Jey joining the Judgment Day, again, further builds resentment from this locker room. And I think eventually when you have Jey refuse to join, it'll firmly endear him to the babyface side. And I think it feels like it would be a great main event level introduction for Jey Uso as a top babyface on the show. So I loved everything about this. Being able to continue to tease, like, part of the magic, I think, of the Bloodline, part of the criticism now about the Bloodline is that they do so many of these mysteries. Will he join? Won't he join? Types of storylines that it started to become stale. And this could get to that point too, but right now it feels very fresh because it's Jey with a different group in the Judgment Day. I think there's a whole new cast of characters now that are being impacted by a Jey Uso decision. You know, whether or not he joins will affect the Judgment Day, but it'll also affect Drew McIntyre, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes eventually as well. So they're really building a really strong, like, fresh set of storylines around Jey Uso as a nucleus of this show, and I think it's completely reinvigorated a lot of my interest in a lot of these characters.
Next week, it'll be Rhea Ripley and Raquel Rodriguez for the women's title. Dominik is banned from ringside, and Cody Rhodes returns.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know he left, but he returns.
He wasn't there today.
He was off today. Gunther and Chad Gable is the main event for the Intercontinental title. They go through the break. Gunther's in control until he gets caught with a knee bar through the ropes, and then there's a chop block by Gable as he goes for the knee. Gunther then runs his boot, and they showed the replay of this, and he drills Chad Gable. Gable tries with some overhand chops, but then one from Gunther puts down Gable. Gable pulls down the straps and fires up, chokes Gable with his boot over the top, and then is sent to the floor. A second commercial break, and these were in pretty quick succession of one another.
They must have not done enough earlier on in the show.
No, so the main event got hit here for the first half, but then they come back and then things really heated up. Gable stops a power bomb and sends Gunther to the floor and hits him with a released German onto the floor. Gable is rolling him into the ring, and as he slides right into position for a power bomb by Gunther. But Gable comes back and he hits this diving headbutt and this near fall. This whole crowd thought Chad Gable was winning the Intercontinental title, but Gunther kicks out. Gable goes right to the ankle lock. Gunther kicks him off. The Chaos Theory is stopped with an elbow. Then Gable puts the straps up and takes them down again, hits the Chaos Theory, another major near fall. He goes for the moonsault, lands on his feet, and puts on the ankle lock, and Gunther rolls. Gable still holds on. The place is heated as they think Gunther could tap, and then he goes to the mat and up kicks Gable, turns it into a rear naked choke, and then Gable rolls on top to get a 2 count. And the ending comes as Gunther hits a sleeper suplex, drills this guy on his neck, hits the power bomb, and then this lariat was unbelievable. It was a shotgun blast and took off Gable's head, and Gunther pins him, and they immediately cut to Gable's daughter, and she bursts into tears. And dude, there was a time in my life where I would have just thought, like, oh my God, what a captivating shot that they got this emotion. Dude, I swear on my life here, this broke my heart to watch this. Oh, yeah. It was so sad to watch this daughter who just burst into tears at her father losing. This was like the most heartbreaking thing. And Gunther wins in 16 minutes and 9 seconds. Awesome main event. I thought this was tremendous. And listen, as much as LA Knight has really caught on with a lot of people, but for me, like, Chad Gable is the one to me that has a lot more mileage with him. He doesn't have all the personality, and he's not as over as LA Knight, but I just look at Chad Gable as somebody that to me has a much higher limit if you can excuse a lot of the way he's been presented all of these years. But I think you're looking at maybe two opposite ends of talents that would combine to make a great wrestler. You have LA Knight with incredible charisma. LA Gable.
Yeah, mash him up, everybody. But then you have Chad Gable, who is charismatic, but not to the extent of LA Knight. Doesn't have the size of LA Knight, but can be an incredible wrestler in ring. That said, you can make money with everybody as long as you accentuate the attribute strengths and diminish the weaknesses. And I'm really glad to see that they are finally accentuating Chad Gable's incredible ability to have great professional wrestling matches. It only took it feels like 5 years, getting through like Shorty G's and even just the start of this Alpha Academy stuff before we realized this guy is actually a great wrestler. Let's put him into.
I think everyone knew he was a great wrestler. That was just.
But then why haven't they pushed him like it, John?
Well, that's a different question, but I think
That's what
everyone
I'm
knew
saying.
the talent was there. It was just, he was never going to get out of a position because this man was unfortunately not born to be a 6'4" individual.
Yes. So they did a great job by, making him feel like a main event star here. And this scene, I think, is going to be, of his daughter crying is going to be the thing we'll all remember coming off of this. She added so much, I thought, to the moment. And yes, it's completely heartbreaking. But
This might totally like humanize Chad Gable in a different way and it was crazy. It was not even as though like it was several minutes later that they saw this. They instantly cut to her, and it was like she hadn't even started. It was like they cut and boom, she burst into tears. It was amazing, the timing of it.
They probably had a camera on her the whole time,
But how could you have known that level of reaction was coming?
They probably knew a reaction was coming.
Maybe they just wanted it, and it ended up being like more dramatic than they thought. Like maybe they just thought, they would get something. But my God, this was just...
It's so heartbreaking, but also so completely beautiful to see.
You have to have Chad come out next week and cut like the most like serious promo that he's done and respond to this and losing in front of his family and consoling his daughter. And I think you could really run with this in a serious way. Like he should not be out next week shooshing.
Yeah. I thought it was so beautiful to see such a like purely innocent reaction from a fan that doesn't know that this stuff isn't real, or at least in this moment doesn't know that this stuff isn't real. This is the type of reaction that professional wrestling at its best was created to, foster. And
maybe she's just a big Honky Tonk Man fan and realizes what this means.
Could be. But if you put ourselves in like her shoes, any of us watching our dads go for the biggest accomplishment of his at least professional wrestling career, fighting his heart out and coming up short, we would all be bawling our eyes out. So I thought she added so much to the emotion of the moment. And I think, if she doesn't already realize it, when she grows up, she will completely realize how much she added to this match. Gunther, of course, is the headline, but man, they got to run with this version of Chad Gable. I will say, I think like what I feel like tonight, even they kind of failed with him, is that I don't think he's very good at cutting a serious promo. Right now, every time I hear him speak, and it's probably because he's kind of been like directed to be such a comedic character over these years. He's arguably gotten the most over he's gotten by being a comedic character.
He's also adopted that, not just like the style, but the cadence of Kurt Angle too. Like just the way he's...
But comedic Kurt Angle and not serious Kurt Angle. And I felt like that was missing from his promo today. You're at this moment now after seeing a scene like this, having a match like this, where he could be positioned as a real serious star. And that might mean shedding, a lot of like the things that people have kind of fallen in love with him for. I mean, not to say he even has to, but he just needs to show a serious side when he's speaking. I didn't really get that sense.
Yeah, I don't think it would be... It's a natural like evolution that you should get coming out of something like this. Like it was an incredible match, but you also had this very like human moment at the end of it as well. So with all due respect to giving aggressive beatings like experts, I think that there is a next level for Chad Gable. But an excellent match, and I would say like I thought this was a pretty entertaining edition of Raw. Coming off of Payback, that you had this Jey Uso thread throughout the show that was not just limited to the first segment. It sort of is setting the stage for this big story on Raw that can weave in so many different players, that they're trying to do a larger story of this locker room.
They are using Jey Uso's entry into Raw as a means of getting to Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes. And I think that's absolutely brilliant. They're using him to further tease dissension within the Judgment Day. And if there's ever talk of like, we kind of discussed a potential War Games match, you have your team already. Judgment Day versus Jey Uso, and name your baby faces on the Raw side. They're also using him to create a trade onto SmackDown. So this little thing by moving Jey Uso over from SmackDown to Raw has created just a huge domino effect of a lot of really interesting things.
Have all the existing animosity between Jey and Kevin Owens. And if a Sami Zayn gets moved, that only heightens that as a program on top of it. Like you have a lot of different options. The Miz segment I just thought was hilarious. I really enjoyed that. I don't know if that's a unanimous opinion people had, but
it's unanimous.
I greatly enjoyed that. So yeah, and the Nakamura follow-up was pretty good. Like I can't say coming out of Payback that I'm dying to see this rematch, but I am really compelled by the character and
the bigger tease is the cash in by Priest.
That I think will be a much more prominent focus, because that was not anything leading into this past match, even with this injured back and such. But yeah, that does feel like that will be a real possibility for this match, which feels like it'll be some kind of gimmick match if they go the last man standing route or something that can be really brutal. That necessitates.
How far away from the next show?
October 7th, so about a month away.
Okay.
All right. Let's open it up. If you want to send in a super chat, you're welcome to do so. And we will also go to forum.postwrestling.com with your feedback.
We got a couple super chats here. One from LCT who sends $5. Thank you for the support. He says, what's next for Gunther? Who beats him to end this epic reign?
Once you've got the record, I think that at that point you maybe want to look at what is I do not want to see some ending to this where it's like he vacates the title at the end of this to go for a world title. Like it should be someone gets something out of this at the end. And is this something that you push until WrestleMania, or do you see a higher ceiling for Gunther before that? Because once you've got the record at that point, I think you've sort of achieved what you can. And I mean, you do also want to not just take it off for the sake of doing it, but have the person that's going to best gain something from it.
I see Gunther's destination, maybe even a WrestleMania level main event at this point. You know, if it's going to be a Seth Rollins or another babyface at that level for the World Heavyweight Championship, to me, like coming off of an IC title run, Gunther is already ready for that spot. So I expect him to lose the championship before that, just so he could make that WrestleMania run. Maybe even he'd be a great candidate to win the Rumble, actually. So, but as far as like who he might face and who might take it off of him, I mean, who are the candidates right now at this level? Who on the Raw roster would you want to see take the belt off of it?
Well, that's the thing about this reign. Like, I don't view people being at like the IC level. I think that this has been elevated to a near. It's not the main event title, but it's not far off. Like, you could have a major name go for this. You could have a Jey Uso go for this. You could have a Kevin Owens go for this. You could anybody that you wanted to go for it. But it doesn't seem as though they have anything. It's not as though they're telegraphing something.
Yeah, as far as like who could pick up the baton and like continue like this sort of elevated like status of the IC title, like I would say the way Jon Moxley, I have full confidence in being able to carry the value that Orange Cassidy has put into the international championship. It's gonna have to be somebody who is a main event player or somebody who like is very close to being a main event player, and maybe that's main event Jey Uso. Because I don't really see any others like at that level. Like, is it? I even think like for LA Knight, like yeah, he's a SmackDown guy if that means anything, but I don't even know if that would be a good level for LA Knight. So I don't know. Maybe Ciampa, like if they get hot enough with him, but we'll see. Let's go up next to Jake Olinar, who sends $5. Thank you, as always, for the support, Jake. He says, John, I saw there's a new book on Ric Flair by Tim Hornbaker. Ordered my copy, and I'm excited to read it. I was wondering if you'll also check it out.
I've actually read the book. So it's, it comes out in a couple of weeks. We'll actually have a review of the book up on the site in a couple of days. So you can look out for that from Brandon Sears.
You recommend it?
It's a very thorough book, especially of I would say pre-WCW years for Ric Flair, like in particular the Mid-Atlantic and Jim Crockett Promotions era for Ric Flair. Very, very detailed of that specific era of Ric Flair, like the most detailed you're going to find on that aspect. Like it's a very, very well-researched book on Flair.
Cool.
Let's go to some feedback here. We go to Muggin. Jey Uso left the tribal nest and on the long, long road to redemption. Everyone he's wronged, being the right-hand man from McIntyre to Riddle to Owens, being leery of him being on Raw has potential to be gripping. An episode light on star power, but the IC title got video packages all night long, and Gunther and Gable was a home run in one of the better TV matches of the year. The faux Elvis will leave the building soon enough. The I can't see Cena jokes must be retired after that Miz segment. R-Truth would sue his ass for biting his shtick.
Oh, this was way better than anything R-Truth has done with little Jimmy. Thank you, Muggin. I like. Are you gonna read those in like a movie trailer voice from now on?
For Muggin, some of them. I think sometimes they're perfect material for them.
Love it. Let's go to Nas, who says, I'm genuinely glad that I sat down for this Raw. The running theme of Jey Uso made him feel like such a big deal. It's really a credit to post-Vince creative that they have been able to create baby faces again.
What a novel concept.
The Miz segment was so good, too good. Put it in the hat for promo of the year. Thanks for all your coverage this weekend and your excellent CM Punk article.
Thank you, Nas. Yeah, it was a great segment. I'm not going to say it was the promo of the year, but it was a very entertaining segment, and it's the finest compliment I can give.
So, I think Miz has been fantastic here. Do you feel like him being so good in any way could harm your perception or audience's perceptions of LA Knight, because he has to be equally as entertaining and clever?
Well, it feels like this program is continuing. So I feel with LA Knight, it's like the question is going to be, is this going to, like, you're pretty much telling the crowd this is a fad that's going to run its course. And I think like there is some legitimacy to people asking if this is going to be a character that ascends much higher, or is this going to be something that is really in vogue now that is going to have legs attached to it. Because I think the more and more, and Payback was a perfect example of it. I think people do see like there's a ceiling to LA Knight. He's a super entertaining over personality. How far do you go with that? And do you have to go all the way with him for your fan satisfaction of, like, obviously the company is behind him, and is that enough, or does his audience want to see something much larger for LA Knight?
Yeah, I think fans will still cheer him, even if like he doesn't have, like, I don't know, as entertaining of a segment on SmackDown. They just like him a lot.
As long as he can come out
like
and talk, he's going to be over to his audience. He's a great talker, and as long as he has that, I think a lot of those guys that are great promos, they can be bulletproof to that their booking, as long as they can go out there and redeem themselves with a great segment, and he has that ability.
And I think he really has to answer for like maybe the criticisms of him being an Austin or Rock clone. And I would argue that he would have to maybe evolve past that to show the audience that he's just a lot more than that he's something original and completely himself.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes 4 consecutive nights of shows. So we want to thank all of you that checked out any and all of those shows over the stretch, from SmackDown to Payback to All Out, the firing of CM Punk on Saturday, which we talked at the beginning of Saturday's show in length and in written form today up at postwrestling.com. And a big thank you to all the help on the website over the weekend, from the great Neil Flanagan, Andrew Thompson, John Cena, John Kleinchester, Dave LeClaire, the whole team putting in a lot of hours covering all of these different events that were going down. MLW had their Fury Road card on Sunday, so John Cena has a report on that. And coming up on Wednesday, 11 a.m., you can hear B Detroit and John Cena here on the Post YouTube channel discussing Up Next. And then we will have a Pollock and Thurston this week, and Wednesday night, Rewind a Dynamite for the fallout from All Out.
And don't forget, UFC 200, Rewind Away, coming out on postwrestlingcafe.com this Thursday. And then after that, Rewind a SmackDown and Collision Course, all cafe exclusives coming out this week.
That's right. We'll do a deep dive into UFC 200, all of the news that week in history in July of 2016. And it was a very newsworthy one as we give our 2023 thoughts on 2016 stories. So tune into that this coming Thursday. And that is it for us. Thank you for watching Rewind to Raw.